I didn't know that I could feel a certain way. I think that I was internally telling myself that this is the way it's going to be. This is just who you are. So I saw a body worker in many, many ways. He got into areas of my body that were able to stretch and transform. I left out of that session shaking, having a deeply embodied experience. About a few hours later, as I was sitting there drinking water, I was sitting there going, this is how I can feel. This is how I can feel. I remember those words coming to me on a consistent basis. And from that experience, I was able to start down a healthy environment, a healthy path. It opened the window for a healthier journey.
Welcome to the Heart of Man podcast, a podcast for any man seeking to live in alignment with his deepest core and lead a life of profound meaning and connection. I'm your host, Alex Lehman, and I'm here to empower you through transformative conversations, eye-opening insights, and practical wisdom. Join me now as we venture into the heart of man. Let's dive in. Edward Olms is an expert body therapist, neurotrauma educator, and the visionary behind Science of Touch, a platform that educates people on safe manual body therapy from a trauma-informed perspective. Edward's journey into the power of touch began with his own accumulation of injuries, where he was eventually guided to seek support through manual body therapy. His profound healing experiences sparked a deep passion in him to understand the potency of touch, leading him down a journey of studying the realms of physiotherapy, psychophysiology, somatic psychology, and neuroscience. I originally came into contact with Edward's work over 2 years ago when I went through a 400-hour breathwork facilitator training, where his platform Science of Touch was offered as a resource for further education. I have since followed Edward's work closely, inspired by his ability to bridge manual body therapy with the realms of neuroscience, trauma healing, and ancient wisdom teachings. When I heard that Edward was coming to Bali for a few months, I knew that we needed to come together in a conversation. In my own personal journey, learning to work with the body, coming into an understanding of the nervous system and how it consistently informs me throughout my day-to-day has truly been a life-changing gift that I never knew I needed. I have since developed a depth of connection with myself through my breath, movement, and touch, a connection that I never knew was possible. And through this conversation, my dearest hope is to provide a glimpse into the doorway I entered almost 5 years ago, a doorway that I now see as absolutely essential in our modern times. And through our dialogue, I aim to shed light on why nurturing a relationship with breath, movement, and touch are foundational pillars for this present time. With Edward's insights into ancient wisdom teachings, coupled with his depth of knowledge in modern science, I knew that he was the right person to share about the intricacies of the nervous system and how we can embark on a journey of deeper connection to ourselves. I hope that you'll find this conversation just as captivating and insightful as I did. Edward Olms, welcome to the Heart of Man podcast.
Alex, thank you so much. It's our third day in Chengdu, and we're integrating, but we are loving being back in town.
Yeah. How does it feel being back in Bali? Yeah, just a curiosity.
Honestly, it's just been exactly the space that we needed to be in at this moment. Like we love that we're interacting with old friends and getting to enjoy the weather and being on a bike. Even being on a bike, like the amount of freedom that entails, because we've been locked in cars and moving around the United States. So just having a degree of freedom here is better.
Yeah, a bit of an understanding as well for the listeners. We have our little motorbikes here in Bali, and there's something that's so beautifully adventurous. And as you say, it generates this feeling of freedom. And it's really one of the highlights as well of my own life to drive these motorbikes throughout the island.
You don't realize how much you miss it until you move away from it for a little while.
Yeah, I bet.
You're like, oh, I miss that adventure,
Well, I would love to just kind of preface this conversation for our listeners. I'm really excited for the listeners. This is the first time we're actually meeting together, Edward. And I first got introduced to your work by Edward Dangerfield, who I went through a breathwork practitioner training with around 2 years ago. And he directed me over to your platform, Science of Touch, where, in my own words, you guide body workers, or you guide people who offer manual touch to support clients in a safe way, but as well in a trauma-informed way, with your background in trauma-informed bodywork. And this is something I'm really, really passionate about, and this is something I would like to bring a conversation into in order to illuminate the listeners into my, at least, current understanding of why this is so valuable, why is this so important. And this is why I really wanted to have you here on the podcast, and this is why I'm so excited about it. So I would like to just maybe start off by just having you share, who are you, what is your background, and what it is that you do in the world.
Yeah. Well, my name's Edward. I am a therapeutic body worker. I fell into this work because I received therapeutic body work on myself. I was a kinesiology major. Kinesiology in the United States is different than kinesiology worldwide. It's just a study of human body movement on a neuroscientific level. And then, so I fell into this work because I had a body worker show me what touch was, what therapeutic touch was, and how meaningful it could be and impactful in my life. And then from that day on, I knew that I was like, oh, this is a very powerful practice. And I think that I already knew that it could be so deeply meaningful and impactful for people, but also that we were in a touch-deprived society. I saw that right away. And I would just say that when I started studying it, I studied, how touch is like a universal language. Touch is actually our first language. It's the first sense that is developed in the womb. It's the first language we learn, and the second language is actually our spoken word. So, and some people that know 3 or 4 languages, they still know touch as their first language. So, so that experience set me down this path of understanding touch and what it means to the body and what it means to impacting memory and trauma, and I developed a practice around it, and then I was able to teach teachers from that. I've been very blessed in my practice.
Yeah, that's incredibly fascinating. And I was sharing, or we had a conversation before the podcast, and I was sharing with you how my first experiences into breathwork were incredibly profound, incredibly impactful. First of all, because that approach, that modality, offered a more body-centric approach towards healing, growth, creating deeper safety and empowerment on my journey. But at the same time, what we incorporated in the work that we do, or at least I was trained now into with Edward, was as well a lot of touch. And I remember the first experiences when I entered these non-ordinary states of consciousness, as we describe them. So states of where we're more open to the subconscious. I recognized how much I was craving touch in those moments. And when I was entering spaces of tenderness, spaces of vulnerability, where there would be a lot of, I'm going to say, emotions moving through me, just to have that touch, there was something about it that felt so comforting, so regulating within my body, that it felt like a language that I couldn't understand with my mind, but my body understood.
Right.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, well, like language is just a constriction of descriptors, right? And so whatever language we know is just trying to parlay information in a succinct way. And touch is way beyond that. It's like 6 leagues beyond our constricted language, because it's universal. It's all around our bodies. It's very hard to lose touch as a sense. We can lose our sight, we can lose our hearing, but the only way to lose touch is through a genetic, a very, very rare genetic disorder. So everyone has accessibility to this language. And it can be very powerful. It carries a power dynamic. So touch can be incredibly supportive. It can also be the most damaging tool that we have.
Yeah.
And so with touch comes a lot of responsibility. And just to say that when we set up therapeutic safe environments for touch, which are not afforded to us on a regular basis at all. Like we need to set more of these up on a consistent basis.
What do you mean by that? If you can just...
Oh, I would just say like there's so much to the bodywork setting that is I guess impactful and meaningful for someone who's not in there regularly. First of all, it's a safe zone with the right practitioner. It's an area where someone can go through an embodied process without judgment-free environment, and it's a place where someone can access touch, in I guess where they're not getting it, or where they're seeking out a valid modality. That's the environment for it. So we need to set up more of these environments.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. And on that note, what I would like to hear a bit more about is, I guess, how touch as well speaks or communicates within the nervous system. And if you could as well provide us a general understanding of the nervous system and how it works, and why as well it is, I guess, important for us to understand the language of our nervous system, the way I would describe that. In another podcast, I actually heard you say that we are actually predisposed to orient ourselves towards danger, and that safety is actually a learned thing. That was something that was really fascinating for me, and how you as well illuminated that the nervous system is actually running the show. So if you could just elaborate on that and bring the listeners to a deeper understanding of that, that would be appreciated.
Well, through our nervous system, our entire world is shaped through reflexory information, or reflexes.
What is a reflex? If you can just add that on.
A reflex would be a stimulus, environmental stimulus, and our body's response to it. We have reflexes throughout our body to conserve energy. So much like an alternator on a car keeps the battery charged, a reflex in the body would just take in information, and what the body does with that information is this continuous loop. So all of our senses are reflexes. Like every mechanical change in our skin through touch gets sent up through through the peripheral nervous system, up into our central nervous system and our spinal cord, up into our brain, where that information is deemed like safe or dangerous, or useful. So also with our eyes, like, why is this plant green? That's a reflex. Why is there a chair under my butt? Like, why do I know that's a chair? That's just that's reflexory information telling me this. So they're all around. They exist in every part of our nervous system. The other thing that these reflexes communicate is, I think, like I said just now, safety or danger. Whenever we orient to danger, that's a series of reflexes organizing in our brain to basically get us into a safer environment. So if someone, for example, if someone drops a plate right behind my head, and I know that it's a plate, I'm safe. But if someone drops something and I don't know what it is, I'm immediately like cascading into a protective response. So reflexes can be postural, they can be protective, and they can be restorative. And so we orient towards danger, like we orient towards getting us into a safer environment naturally. But learning that safe environment is safe is something that is a reforming our memory banks. It's like reformation of our memory systems, and so we actually have to learn safety. Like, we orient to danger, but we have to learn safety.
This is fascinating, and what I'm curious about is to hear how perhaps specific events that we have experienced where we were in a moment where we had this perception of danger, or maybe there wasn't a real sense of danger, how those then influence our lens towards danger and safety.
It has to do with the dynamics of a neurotransmitter called dopamine. So dopamine stamps our memories and makes them permanent. Dopamine is a very interesting molecule. It gets released. We typically think it's a reward neurotransmitter, so it gets released when we get a reward, and that makes us feel good and happy. But it really gets released to motivate us, to move our muscles. So if you take away dopamine, you get Parkinsonian symptoms. So like it's an actual important neurotransmitter for voluntary movement of our muscles. And then it's a neurotransmitter that assigns importance to things and attention. And so if a large event has happened, or if a series of smaller events have happened, dopamine imprints that memory, and then all of our motivatory factors go in that direction. And so that could be with trauma, that could be with addiction, that can also be with super healthy activities such as running, or receiving body work, or learning that we can cultivate like healthy factors in our lives. So everything has to do with dopamine and how it influences our learning. So for example, I have to bring this up because this is really interesting. Our entire brain is a predictive environment. So we're constantly running predictions all the time, predictions of what's going to happen, so that it keeps us safe. Yeah, like it's based on like the last thing that we learned. So we're predicting over the last thing that we learned, and so that ties in with like danger. If the last thing we learned was like that this was a dangerous environment, we're predicting like how to keep us safe out of danger.
Yep.
And that actually can like move our baseline in an unhealthy way, so that we're always predicting danger.
Yeah, and we're coming from this predisposed place of I am in danger.
Yeah,
continuously.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
exactly. But we need to learn safety.
Yeah.
If we learn safety, we can bring that baseline back.
So how can we do that? And I'm wondering if it would be of value in any way to have bring a bit of a deeper understanding of how the nervous system works, specifically maybe, because I know you studied as well polyvagal theory quite deeply. I wonder if that could be valuable for our listeners to kind of bring that in, and how we can as well learn how to feel safe, or learn to incorporate safety within our lives.
Yeah, so we have a central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord. We have a peripheral nervous system. So everything else, so the vagus nerve dropping down into our body is telling us how our internal body is supposed to feel at any given time, or gauging our the vagus nerve also slows our heart rate down into a healthy parasympathetic response.
So it's specifically designed, like it specifically governs a lot of our rest, digest, relaxation responses. Is that how you describe it?
Yeah. So like during this conversation, I will have to speed my heart rate up and slow it down.
Right.
And so also the slowing down part is going to be the vagus nerve. It's called the vagal brake. So that's constantly going in a dynamic up and down, up and down, up and down, just so we can like gauge the back and forth of this conversation. In trauma, that gets really affected, the ability to slow that heart rate down, that vagal brake.
So what happens?
So that vagal brake gets lifted, and so I'm constantly running in maybe a sympathetic.
So it creates this imbalance between activating, and then as well we don't have the capacity anymore to relax that response. So we're only on the gas dial, but we're not on the brake anymore.
Correct. Okay. Correct. And there's many ways to influence the parasympathetic nervous system. So you can coach relaxation, or you can shock the hell out of the system, and that would be getting into ice baths, or breath work, or any sort of activity that would challenge the system and allow it to come back in a healthy way. So so we have those tools available to us. Deep relaxation, by the way, is what I coach in like a bodywork session. getting into a state of theta, and we can go into that. But there's many ways to affect the autonomic nervous system. You also have the nerves that come out of your spine. So the nerves that come out of your head, that's your vagus nerve. That's those are your parasympathetic and sympathetic chain ganglia. Those are also the ones that do the fight or flight response.
Right.
But then you also have like the nerves that come out of your spine and into your peripheral body.
What do those do?
Those are muscle function, postural muscle function, active motor responses. So those are going to control either posture or movement.
Mm-hmm.
And what we don't talk about often is that those nerves actually, through something called proprioception, those nerves tell us who we are in space. They're very important. They give us the information of I can be like this body. Like I have this body that can move and do these things. That's a deeply meaningful experience for somebody.
And that is termed under proprioception, is that correct?
Yeah, like if I'm not looking at my arms and I know my arms are there, that's my brain saying I am those arms.
Right.
And I can trust that those arms are there.
Yes.
And so that's a very meaningful experience for somebody to know their body. And sometimes in fight or flight responses or chronic trauma or chronic illness or any chronic conditioning where our conditioning, where our baseline is moved into like a realm of like a subconscious conditioning, like we can lose touch with our body. We can lose touch with who we are in space. And then we just default to, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I'm worthless.
Yeah.
Like other things that can come along with losing our sense of body.
Yeah.
And so like what I love about touch, what I love about bodywork is giving somebody that sense back.
I love that. And I would like to like bring that in with a personal example of mine. I mean, the reason why I'm so passionate about this work, that you do and that I as well now incorporate through breathwork, is because of the felt experience that I've had in my life, right? And the way I would term what you have been describing in my own way is, a lot, like I could bring a lot of the movements through, but it was very mechanical. And sometimes I would come out of these sessions and be like, I would have this experience of, oh shit, I can feel my legs. I can feel my arms, right? And it was the way I would describe it, it was a sense of I'm home in my body, which then generated the experience of, oh, it's like a level of safety.
Yeah.
There's no other way to describe it, right? And I know I'm trying to describe this experience through words, but it's a felt experiential moment.
Absolutely.
That I'm not able to bring it through, and I'm doing the best that I can in this moment. But there is something incredibly profound within that. And the reason why I believe this is just valuable is that the more I had that understanding within myself that I'm as safe in my own body, the less I was looking outside of myself for that safety.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on that?
I would say you had a series of predictions about what your body was, what your life was, what your body could do with that life. And you had those predictions exceeded in a way that was through the body, through a new sensory experience. And this is what's important. You had a new memory formation. And the cascading effects, the cascading motor effects because of dopamine that were positive on your body were positive in a lasting way. You have that memory now for a long time. And you can share that memory, and you can understand what people go through when they have that memory as well. There's a deep level of empathy now that you've experienced. So just to match that, I had that experience as well with a body worker. It was 2012. I was trying to figure out what to do with my work. I was in physiotherapy. And I would say, like, I'm a survivor of pretty nasty injuries throughout my life. If there's a 5 out of 5 on an injury scale, I was consistently meeting the 5. So through those experiences and through trying to see many doctors through those experiences, I had gathered a protective mechanism, or a series of protective mechanisms. Many of them were physical and many of them were emotional.
Were you aware of them? If I could just jump in.
Yeah, no, probably not. Probably not. I think drinking and partying was like right on up there with the norm. And I think that I didn't know that I could feel a certain way. And I think that I was internally telling myself that, this is the way it's going to be. This is just who you are. And so it's emotional for me. So like so I saw a body worker. I got introduced to a body worker through the school I was looking to attend. And in many ways, he got into areas of my body that were able to stretch and transform. And I left out of that session shaking, like having a deeply embodied experience. About a few hours later, I didn't go home, and I went home and I didn't get into like any sort of I didn't eat like a big meal. I just drank water. And as I was sitting there drinking water, I was sitting there going, this is how I can feel. This is how I can feel. I remember those words coming to me on a consistent basis. And from that experience, I was able to start down a healthy environment, a healthy path. It opened the window for a healthier journey. And like, when I tell you that like moment was impactful for me, it really shifted from like what I was doing to my body in a destructive way to what I could do for my body in a healthy way. And like now that's years down the road. Like that's more than a decade down the road, and I'm still living with that memory. So that's how meaningful touch can be, and specifically working with the sensory body to shape a new experience. Yeah.
And this is so profound, and I thank you as well for being willing to just share about that. I imagine our listeners will deeply appreciate that. Yeah. What really stood out for me was this understanding of you didn't know what was possible, I guess, right? And then as you described, all of a sudden you entered this like new window, and then had this felt experience of, I can feel this way. Yeah. This is possible, ultimately. And it was through that experience that a new pathway opened up for you, right? Which is, I guess, this is where I imagine most people kind of get stuck. They don't understand what's out there, what's possible for them. That's just the way it is. Right. That's just who I am. Right. That's just how I feel. That's just how things are. And it's like there's this felt understanding that everything is set in stone, and there is no malleability in that way. And what your experiences and what I've described as well, my own experience, suggests is that there is a level of malleability there that we can as well work with, right?
Yeah, and I would say that's the missing piece in our therapeutic environment. Like talk therapy can be very important for somebody. And what I had to do post that experience is go into a sort of narrative building therapy with a therapist as well. I saw the validity in that. Mm-hmm. But like what I think that society is not getting, because therapy is celebrated. That's celebrated. It should be. It's amazing. We really need to get our narrative straight sometimes. But if you were to send me into a therapy session before that embodied experience, I don't think it would have had the same impact.
Why not?
Because I didn't have that sensory memory of like a new, healthier journey.
Right. Okay. So we would probably just be recycling what it is that we know, and Yeah,
Exactly.
ultimately how we know ourselves.
Yeah, I would have been in a loop potentially.
Yes.
You know, you know, there, like around 1900s, like with Freudianism, therapy became a very much like you on the couch, me over here.
Yes.
And there really wasn't this like one-on-one environment using like sensory experiences,
Yes.
breathwork, or tools, modalities like ice tubs even. There's amazing data out there now with cold plunges and recovering from alcoholism.
All right.
It's the dopamine spikes that they're getting people into is lasting and sustaining. And so you're seeing this being implemented in recovery and treatment programs now. So
I love it.
it's a huge, I'm loving seeing that,
Yeah.
like when people are talking about this, but yeah, it used to be very much like you over there on the couch, me over here listening. And you know, the success rate might have been higher and higher and higher over the course of the century if we were to just have maybe incorporated embodied experiences.
And this is something I want to have, like, I want to bring a deeper understanding to, you know, because I really agree with you based on my own experiences and based on the understanding that I've now cultivated within all of that. And at the same time, like for me, the default was to understand things with my mind, right? To bring a more cognitive approach. And I've always been very passionate about psychology and philosophy, and like I still love it, right? But at the same time, I do understand as well now the limitations to that, and that there is no way for me to enter certain places without taking a more body-centric approach.
Absolutely.
Can you describe why that is? And yeah, like maybe just illuminate us why that's so important and why cognitive approaches will never suffice.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a tale as old as time. It really is. It's like people have been talking about this for 5,000 plus years. They're like, okay, no, you got to understand that memories get formed through the senses. They get imprinted on your mind. Yeah, yoga talks about this. The Native Americans have developed entire treatment and therapy programs, where you have to go through the senses to change your memory and change your understanding of yourself. So, like if it's been like common knowledge forever, like why do we think we get to change it in 100 years? By having cognitive top-down approaches, using workbooks to find triggers. It's like we can do that. That's valuable, but first, we need to melt away the samskaras or the impressions on the memory banks.
How does that translate over into the work that you do? What I'm as well interested in hearing about is when a client or when somebody shows up in your office on the table, what do you usually see is manifesting themselves, and like what is it that you specifically do that to help people enter those type of states?
My work is very passive. There's a lot. The body work can be many different things, many different interpretations. But I think that the main thing, and I take this from Andrew Huberman, is that focus, and like a combination of focus, which would be dopamine, and deep rest are the grounds for neuroplasticity. That's how you change the nervous system, and specifically the functionality of the nerves. So a passive, by passive I mean the client's not doing any sort of active work. Besides breathing. So I'm a very passive practitioner, and then I'm a very technical practitioner. So I'm looking to stretch very specific tendons of the body in ways that people can't access on their own. Each tendon has its own receptor that tells us where our body is at in space. Thousands of receptors, but each tendon has those that tells us how much tension is on a muscle, And we want each one of those to be sending good feedback to the brain. So I go tendon by tendon, and I make these small micro adjustments. Now, when I make those micro adjustments, I see a reflex pop off. I see reflexes go up the spine. And whenever I see reflexes go up the spine, I know I'm in the right spot.
How does that reveal itself to you?
It's usually in the form of like a small muscle contraction. And then if I go too hard, I'm going to get a protective response. So it's this like back and forth with the client, this easing, this don't go too much pressure, but also go with enough that makes a physical change.
Right.
And I'm constantly in this back and forth communication with someone's subconscious body.
Right. So it's like you have to enter those states, but at the same time carry a level of attunement and sensitivity to not go too far, to create kind of like a backlash.
Yeah, because once I create that protective response, I can maybe imprint a negative memory on their body. So I'm really trying to be careful. And by careful, I mean like I'm still going deep.
Yes.
I still know exactly where to press. And then the other part of the work is deep rest. When someone is in these states of non-sleep deep rest or yoga nidra, they are awake and alert, but they're also like able to get into parasympathetic and attune to like very subtle things like their heartbeat and their breath. And then that can be very valuable because they're usually not in that state at all during the day. Like everyone, by 9 o'clock, we're all ramped up on coffee trying to figure out like what we're going to do. So to get somebody into that state can be very valuable.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that with my own experiences, and I'm very appreciative of Edward and the approach that I as well learned through him in the breathwork that we do, because there's as well a lot of breathwork styles which bring a deeper focus towards the activation, but not so much on the relaxation space, right?
Yeah.
And because my norm as well was to kind of go into these spaces of activation. I love it. Like
I know it's sexy. It's like we want to see that.
Yes.
We want to see change.
Yes.
We want to see like rah rah, let's go.
That's it, right? So that was my norm, and that was my default, and it's what I loved, right?
Yeah.
But then I was always directed and guided towards, dude, chill.
Yeah.
Relax, like let things be easy. That was like one of the common sentences I heard when I was doing breathwork sessions. And what it suggested to me over time was what I got was to actually bring a bit more balance in that relaxation response that at that time was still very limited for me. And I now, having experienced it, understand the value of that because that as well expressed itself in my life, right? I had this like very go-go mentality and was at the edge of burnout, but I had no capacity to rest, to digest, nor did I understand when I was at my edge. So I didn't have that felt sense of understanding of, oh, okay, I think we're going at our edge right now. You need to tone down a little bit, right? And I didn't have the capacity to do that. This is why I believe this work is so damn important.
How valuable was that? Yeah, like that's to even have a realization that, that okay, I need to cultivate this space for better learning, for better learning environment for myself. That can be so crucial, and it can also be hard to. It can be difficult to find that. I've burned out twice, and I know this stuff. It's hard sometimes to admit to yourself that I need to take 5-10 minutes and just get out of like whatever I'm doing and
totally
and tap in.
Yeah, I'll share with you a personal experience today. Like I was supposed to lead a breathwork circle, and I reached out to one of the people and saying I can't. Like I am at the edge right now because I just launched this podcast like a few days ago, and like a lot's been happening, and I was literally at my edge. And this morning I was just like, I knew I wanted to do this interview with you, and it's something I was looking forward to, but I had to give myself the afternoon, the evening, just to rest.
Yeah.
And in the past, I wouldn't have been able to do that. I wouldn't have been able to say no to that because I had this heroic mentality. I had this impression inside of me that if I say no to that, and if I cancel, if I tend to myself, I may be perceived as weak.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll not do that. Right.
Yeah.
And it was really fascinating for me to see that, and how that way of thinking would as well guide me into burnout. Right. If I didn't understand as well a way of, getting myself out of those kind of like impressions that I've maybe cultivated over time.
I think that over the past like 20 years, 10 years maybe, I think that's been a really beautiful shift in society, is the acceptance of understanding someone else's limit empathically. Like, I really have seen that on numerous occasions where someone will get into their power and they'll say, I don't think I can do that today. But the beautiful thing is when I see someone else go, yeah, I understand that. Like, I've been there. I know exactly what you mean. So like, let's totally, let's reorganize our plans or do anything like when I see someone else come from that understanding, I was like, I'm always like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's something I haven't seen in the past like few years, or that's something I have seen more in the past few years than I have in previous years. So
I can absolutely relate to that. And that's how it was as well received. And I was so appreciative of that, that I'm in an environment where that can be just received so deeply.
Yeah.
This is just really like all fascinating. And the thing that I would like to have a deeper understanding towards is what happens when we've described how certain events, certain habituated ways of being can default us into a position of danger.
Yeah.
And I would like to hear more about how does that express itself then in the body, and what is the work that you then do on that?
Yeah, with any conditioning is a default motor pattern. So we will default toward seeking behaviors, or we'll default toward protective behaviors, or we'll default toward and by behavior I mean like subconscious. Like we're not aware of these behaviors. This is like the way our motor patterns start to move. When I'm working with a body, when I'm working with breath, we are adjusting those motor patterns out of the default. And by just giving someone enough space out of the default, you give them the awareness that they can move out of the protective or seeking response.
Right. So it sounds like you're supporting them in cultivating a level of awareness of that experience.
Absolutely. Or giving them a moment. And that moment can be impactful. Yeah.
And that awareness, or that moment, that gives them a deeper opportunity to have agency to work with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Agency is like the name of the game.
Why is that the name of the game?
Because someone can feel, or maybe they don't even know that they feel, constricted or tied down by an emotion, tied down by an environment. And then just to give them an experience where agency is priority. It feels good to do something for yourself, and it feels good to see someone who has done something good for you. And when you get out of an environment and you get to say that, that's agency. And that's like that, there's a whole cascade of good things that come from that. Not to mention all the neurochemicals involved in that: oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine. So these all get reorganized, rearranged in a way that's healthy. I think at that moment in time, though, it's really important that the practitioner be trauma informed. And I think that's where we're moving as a society with our embodied practitioners, is like understanding that we're in a human experience. We can have shifting patterns of behavior based on our human experiences. Some human experiences are terrifying, and that can be like that could be where we start to lean toward. And some embodied experiences that practitioners can take us through can bring these. They can bring us back to like a healthy baseline, but they can also bring up a lot of emotions. So it's understanding that I'm providing a space. Trauma informed does not mean trauma therapy.
Yep.
It means like I'm providing a space for you to go have more self-awareness of your body, and I'm going to do that in a safe environment. That's what a trauma informed person is.
When these processes or these felt experiences come to the surface, and perhaps the person lying on the table is going into an experience where they're flooding, or there's a lot of emotions present, how do you usually work with that so they can actually come out of that feeling more empowered and more safe?
Yeah, I think just without trying to fix someone. I think that's the pivot that we all really want to look for, is like when someone is going through these environments and these emotional floods. It's always good to start by saying, "Hey, look, I'm right here. If there's anything I can do for you in this moment, I will." And then not trying to flood them with like, "Do you want this? Do you want that?" It's more of a I have a heavy blanket. I have a hand for you to hold. I have a glass of water.
Yep.
And I'll be here for you. And then when that's over, like, cause it'll just take as long as it takes. Then there's space for negotiation and talk.
Yeah. I was laughing because I can see, of course, my own tendencies from the past, but then as well, that's such a, it seems like such a default to want to fix.
Oh yeah.
But then as well, or
it's
like
my life's work.
Yeah. To caretake, because from my experiences, I was not feeling comfortable myself in their response.
Yeah.
And so I needed them to feel better so I could feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things my wife and I, Kelly, had shout out. One thing that we've gotten into is saying, okay, do you in this moment, do you want comfort or do you want me to fix this? Like by giving those two options,
yes.
It solved a lot of issues. So or strife,
Yeah. I love it. And I'm curious, how does co-regulation fit into the mix when these responses come up? And how can co-regulation be translated?
Okay. Co-regulation is not an activity that we do.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a subtle environment of two people's nervous systems communicating in many ways below our level of consciousness. So co-regulation would be taking a breath and allowing somebody to take a breath with you. Like if someone's not knowing how to take a breath in that moment, we automatically go and like allow them to match that. That cascades into heartbeats syncing up. Tactile presence is really important. Warmth of a hand, warmth of a blanket, and it's almost this level of empathy that our nervous systems are matching. And just presence is the big key part of that, is just being next to somebody in a space that is going to foster that.
Why do you believe presence is so important and essential?
We're in a very distant society. We're in a very achieving, individualistic society, and that maybe that moved out of America into the rest of the world. Maybe that's just my American lens on things, but I've certainly growing up have seen a reinforcement of individualistic activity, and I feel like we're not afforded spaces where it's together as much, two people moving toward a common goal.
Yeah.
even entrepreneurship can be like isolating sometimes.
Yeah.
And you're working with many people all the time. So achievement gets celebrated, individualistic achievement gets celebrated, but sometimes like we need, we can't do things alone.
Yeah.
We can't.
Yeah. I guess what you're really speaking to for me as well by saying these things, which I definitely agree with, is the absence of interacting, engaging with each other relationally, right? And that our goal-driven, purpose-driven, achievement-driven way of living can be directed in such a way that we're more coming from our heads, but we're not seeing, okay, how are we engaging with others? How am I being, and how is that influencing, how is that impacting another, right? And because there is such an absence, a lack of that, it seems like that's what we're really craving.
I would say we're craving it. I would also say that like we just don't want to lose. We're doing practices, and I think it's coming on stronger. We're doing practices that are supposed to be cultivating empathy for others, by grounding ourselves and taking care of ourselves, like first, filling our own cups up first. I see that a lot going on, especially here in Bali, which is fortunate. I love that part about this place. But that there's the other side of that. There's like the performative side, and we need to be aware of like, am I doing this for the sake of myself and for others, or am I doing this for the sake of my ego? Or you see those two quite often. So
yeah. Thanks, brother. I'm curious to hear more about what it is that you believe another person, someone who's listening to this conversation, what would be useful for them to know about the work that you do, and what is a message perhaps that you'd like to share with the listeners? I would just like to really offer the space.
I think I would say that we naturally seek out connection. We naturally seek out activity. We are a motivated individual person, individual body. We have all these chemicals communicating with us all the time to drive us and give us purpose and meaning in our lives. And an essential part of that is to take ourselves through an embodied experience in the presence of another, and the loving, caring presence of another. Whether it be yoga, and my beautiful, amazing wife is a tantric hatha yoga practitioner. She leads many people through very specific embodied experiences that have been handed down through time, and she's amazing. It's about like when it's about seeking these environments like that out. It's about seeking environments like body work out. It's in seeking environments like breath work out for your mental health, and knowing that you're not. It's very hard to impact mental health without the embodied experience. And then I would also say that I think it's really important that I think it's important to know that you are allowed to ask your practitioners questions and interview them as the right ones.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, we'll go off someone's suggestion, we'll go off someone's recommendation, and then that person won't be for us, and then we'll feel a sense of guilt or shame that we didn't like that we didn't like it, or we didn't feel like that was the right activity for us. And I think that that's okay. I think we need to normalize that a little bit more, because that can turn people off of these embodied experiences. So just knowing that it's a constant seeking of your own health, mental health, and capacity for change, and finding an environment that's healthy and conducive for that, and just knowing that you can ask questions, you can be empowered to find what's right for you. Yeah, I think that's really important. I think that would be a message that I would want to get across, and just to know that these are like body work. I've seen the most amazing transformations come from consistent body work. I've seen people shape their entire lives because they have found a new feeling. You know, we call them feelings for a reason.
Yeah.
Like it's a felt sense. It's a tactile. It's through touch. We don't have thinkings. we have feelings. We don't have thinkings. You know, so like we need to work with these feelings. We need to work through the embodied experience to be able to decipher what these are.
Yep.
And then comes, our narrative building structure. Then comes working with a therapist to really hone in on who am I and what's my place in the world.
Thank you, man. I really love this message, and I really love as well just the importance that you said on working with the body as a foundation. That's really what I received as well. And another as well, giving the empowerment to the listener, giving the empowerment to the person who was seeking for help, right? And recognizing they have the power to ask questions. They have the power to choose with whom they want to work with and what feels as well safe in their own bodies.
Absolutely.
Right. What I'm interested to hear a bit more about is if the listener is currently not in a position where they're able to perhaps work with a trained practitioner, maybe there could be various reasons for that. What can they already do to start going on a journey of creating deeper safety, but as well deeper empowerment within themselves to work with the felt experience, I guess?
Well, the beauty about modalities like yoga is that it was developed originally as a science of self-practice and self-mastery and self-embodiment. I think focusing on self-practice would be the grounds for starting. And then someone would probably be ready to move on into an environment of one-on-one work. So to clarify, you're saying they might not be ready to see a practitioner?
Yeah, perhaps it's finances. Perhaps they're not in a position where they feel safe enough to do so yet.
Yeah.
And how can they work, at least already take the first steps towards working with the felt experience to explore a more embodied-based approach towards living that doesn't maybe require them yet to work with another practitioner, whilst at the same time, that is probably kind of like what we want to aspire for in the future.
Yeah. Well, Patanjali said in the Yoga Sutras that the body is the vehicle to remember the soul. And so
I love that.
Yeah, your body is a vehicle. It's free. You don't have to pay yourself. You can start today. And so getting a practice that you have free reign to get a practice that you like. Get a practice that you like. And do it for 40 days. That's a sadhana. If you do something for 40 days, that's grounds for learning something new. And so we have the body is the vehicle. It's the tool that we all have to work toward a goal. If maybe you get so much out of that practice that you chose that you want more, or you want to seek more, and then seek more, and then when finances come, then you can start to explore, or when you're comfortable in your own body again, then you can start to explore. But I think that if we're seeking practices, there's always, we do want a voice, we do want an expert, we do want someone who's learned to help guide us. I think that's really important. But by no means does it have to be at heavy cost or at heavy energy expenditure.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, the entry for a lot of the work that I do, or at least exploring, this journey that I've been on, has been yoga, right?
Yeah.
Like around almost 5 years ago, I went through yoga teacher training, and I understood its value through going through the experience. I didn't know the value before I started. It was really through the felt experience of, lying down in Shavasana, in a relaxation pose, and literally feeling a sense of like being at home, and a sense of what I would describe in my own words as bliss in my own body, that gave me an understanding, shit, there is value in this. I want to do this again, right?
Yeah.
And keep going at it, and keep, like, for me at that time, it was as well a great vehicle as well for exploring self-improvement, because it was just something that, and it still is, it's something that has always been a big driver of mine, but then exploring it in a way that was as well, felt very conducive for my body, right?
Yeah.
So I can very much vouch for that kind of being an amazing entry point. I'm curious to hear, how does yoga play into the work that you do, or like, is that, or is there any connection there? Because it seems like you have a very deep as well affinity for yoga, and as well considering that your wife as well is a hatha yoga teacher.
Yeah.
How does that play in it?
It's a big I wouldn't know half of the things I know without the things that Kelly's taught me. So hatha yoga in particular is a wise sequence. It's not a style of yoga. It's like an umbrella that yoga was formulated under. So the big thing about hatha that I love in particular is that the poses are held for a good amount of time, and breath catches up to those poses. You can shape the breath in those poses, and what those poses do on a scientific level is they challenge those stretch receptors in each one of the muscles in a way that allows them to find kind of like a length where they maybe weren't finding before, and so you have that proprioceptive value, like all of a sudden, joint by joint, coming up into the mind and shaping a new like sense of self, and then you do pranayama, and then you meditate on that sense of self, and it's like a wise sequence on how to get there. And I think that's, like, when I look at it and I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. It's informed my work. It's informed the way that I speak about body work to my clients. And then I always suggest yoga. Tantra is a whole science based around that, but the actual vehicle of hatha yoga has been just beautiful.
Yeah, I personally agree as well. Like, considering that I've explored various different approaches of yoga, and some of them don't feel as conducive for the body and are so fast paced that I feel like my body can't really catch up to it, and I actually need to disconnect my body in order to continue with these sequences. So that's kind of like where I guess it can be harmful even,
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's why I think I just suggested, like, when someone finds the practice that's right for them, it's like, that's such an agency building exercise. Also to say, like, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
I wish I said that in one yoga class where I tore my meniscus.
Oh man.
But I wish I would have said that right before that class.
Right.
But finding a practice that you can back out of is as valuable as finding a practice that works for you. So, yeah. The saying, this one's not for me.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, we're kind of like slowly winding down within this conversation. And one last topic that I want to touch into is, as you know, this podcast is called The Heart of Man. And what I'm gearing towards is supporting men to, I'm going to say, connect back to their core and learn how to live from that place in deeper resonance and deeper connection within themselves. And I'm curious to hear more about what it is that you've been finding within the male clients that you've been working with. And of course, I don't want to go into any specifics or specific experiences but rather, like, what are some of the patterns perhaps that you've been observing within your male clients? And as well, what is a message that you believe could be very useful for them, for any male listeners to hear?
Yeah. And I won't speak for like the global man.
Sure.
Like, we're all so different, and I love that about us guys. Is like we come in with different experiences, different senses of purpose, and I would just say that the men that I've worked with, in so many ways, like seek and want they want to support those around them, and then with that support can come like some patterning, which is just natural. It's just we love to take on load sometimes, and then that load can actually be experienced in our bodies. So I love being able to give men like some weight off of their shoulders, so to say. Literally though, like that. Sometimes we'll be like, we'll lock up in the shoulders, and we'll be like these big, broad individuals, and so giving another man platonic support can. It's been a learning experience for some. It's been a challenge for some. It's been a beautiful experience for some. It's been an experience that has built me and another brother's relationship deeply. So I really love working with my guys. I would just say. I would just say on a professional level, a lot of guys take on a lot of stress in many different ways, that many different professions that they have chosen throughout their life. So I also like to work on a profession by profession level with a lot of guys. And so typically what I'll see with certain professions is certain holding patterns, and to give someone freedom from those holding patterns has been really beautiful. I'm thinking about my special operators, and I'm thinking about my football players. So being able to give them like freedom from those like workplace environments has truly been impactful for me and for them. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful, brother. Yeah, and thank you so much for this message. And I think that can be so really helpful, and like it's just as well such a beautiful reminder for me and as well the guys that I work with, that it's okay for us to as well receive at times, and that we don't always need to give and like go out there and like carry those loads with us, but sometimes it is useful to really let those go.
And I think we're I think we need to cultivate as much platonic male touch as possible.
Yeah.
It differs from society to society. I was talking with Tiffany Field at the Touch Research Institute in Miami, and she's just like, look, like people in Brazil, where my wife's from, they're touching people's legs, they're giving hugs, they're tactile,
yes,
like 50% of the time.
Yeah.
And if you go to America, they're tactile like 2% of the time.
Wow.
So it's just a huge difference.
All right.
I was sitting with coffee with my friend Gianluca in Uluwatu, and he's just touching my leg, like to talk, to like bring a like some sort of like if he wanted to land a point with me, like he's touching my leg to land a point, and I'm like, this is awesome. Like I actually get you now. Like I get what you're trying to tell me, and I'm just like, think of all that communication that's being that's being lost in translation across the globe. And especially between guys, because we sometimes we want to do the thing by ourselves. I know I personally need to ask men's help. Something I aspire to do more of, and so we're getting all we just need to cultivate a communal brotherhood sense of touch.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And like one of the aspirations that I personally have as well in the work that I do is to support men in learning how to have deeper brotherhood, deeper communion with other men, and that is, of course, based on my own experiences and woundings of like lone wolfing my way through life.
Yeah.
And I see that being experienced through a lot of men as well that I speak to. And I would just like to support them on a pathway forwards for that.
Yeah. Guys, get your body work.
That's it. Edward, this has been such a pleasure for me. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah, thank you so much for your wisdom, your knowledge. It's such a gift to receive somebody who has such a depth of knowledge within the nervous system, within body work, understanding the body and reflexes. And yeah, thank you for your time.
I appreciate you. It's been a beautiful conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm curious to hear if there's one last message that you'd like to give our listeners. What would it be?
Yeah, I think it's just go get body work, to be honestly. Like nice. That's my message, like across the globe. Like the pandemic, and I'll just go briefly into this. They created just such a level of touch deprivation on an already touch deprived society. A lot of distrust is out there, a lot of pain, and a lot of that can be, started to be worked with if we just celebrate body work a little bit more. And so we really need to train more body workers. We really need to train more therapeutic touch professionals. So that's my goal.
I love it. Tell our listeners more about your work and where they can find you online.
Yeah, I'm at scienceoftouch.com. My Instagram handle is Science of Touch. I was very lucky to get that handle because I'm sharing literally touch science all the time. The science of the deep science of what it means to be held and embodied. So I'm celebrating that on my Instagram. I do have a practitioner training, and I have a master class coming up. So yeah, we'll see how those go here soon.
Nice. Yeah, I'll make sure as well to link up all the info on the episode notes. And yeah, for all the listeners, thank you for coming online. Thank you as well for being part of this conversation with me and Edward. And until next time, much love. Thank you for listening to this episode. Your time and attention is truly appreciated. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe to stay tuned for my upcoming episodes. And in case you know somebody who would find this episode helpful, I encourage you to pay it forward. Finally, if you've personally been receiving value from the show, one way you're able to support this podcast is by leaving a 5-star rating and a written review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Not only does this help more people find the show, but it also supports me in bringing more incredible guests on for the future. I'm your host, Alex Lehman, and until next time, signing off.